now coming up for the rest of this hour, you've heard the numbers. You'll join Bob Chapman here, international forecaster. He's looking ahead. He's trying to figure out exactly where the economy is going, how to zig just before the economy zags, and what he can do to help you next on Coast to Coast AM. This is Ian Punnett. On to Memphis, where Brad is standing by on Coast to Coast AM for Bob, the international forecaster, Chapman. Go ahead, Brad.
Yes, hi. I had a couple questions on Japan and then another question for Mr. Punnett. Firstly, what's your take on the election coming up on August 30th and the possibility of the opposition winning, and your general forecast for Japan in the next couple years and the rising yen and so forth? And the second question, I'll hang up and answer, is do you think that the promotion of gold by Coast to Coast presents a conflict of interest for talking about gold so much?
Don't hang up on that. And I think it's a tough spot to be in, because you're not hearing me talk about it. I'm not taking a position on gold. I don't have a dog in that fight. It is Bob Chapman's opinion that that's the way to go. And then you're right. I mean, we do that, and then we run to a commercial break, and then you hear somebody on talking about gold. So I could certainly understand why you would think that way, but I don't know any other way to do it. What would you suggest, Brad?
I'm not sure. It's just that second question just kind of came to me because I just hear gold promoted so much,
right,
and then we're talking about gold so much. So I was like, just thinking if it was, some kind of, like if you would ever have a guest on that would say, don't buy gold, you know what I'm
right,
saying? But that just sort of came to me as a second.
No,
thought.
I think
I really wanted to hear.
I think it's
what
a fair.
take was on the Japanese election.
Well, we'll get to that answer, but I do think it's a fair question to ask, is do we have a conflict of interest? Bottom line is, I didn't know what the guest was going to say, so I am unconflicted about that. Bob, now on your website, are you selling gold on your website?
I don't sell gold. I don't sell anything. I don't receive any money from anybody with the exception of the subscribers.
Okay.
And I do recommend securities. I recommend brokers, both in gold and silver, as well as in regular stocks. And I never receive any compensation from them.
All right, there you go. There's your answer for that, Brad. Now, what about the Japanese
pure
elections?
As the driven snow, as you might say, when it comes to that.
Pure as 24 karat gold. Well, so what's your take on the upcoming Japanese elections?
I think there's a good chance that there'll be a party change, but I don't think it makes an awful lot of difference. It is my take, after having studied deeply the events before and after the Second World War, that an agreement was made between the United States and Japan, and that we won't go out and have war crime trials with the exception of hanging Tojo, and we have to have one person sacrificed. And you'll do what we tell you to do in the future, and we'll protect you. And so the control of both political parties in Japan from behind the scenes has been the United States government and in great part the Central Intelligence Agency.
Okay. Very good. Let's get to, I guess, Laura Ann is next in Farmingdale, New York on Coast to Coast AM for Bob Chapman. Laura Ann?
Hi. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for taking my call. First, any attempt at revolution could really, really easily just become a civil war between the haves and the have-nots. But what I wanted to talk about and ask you about is, do you know what happened on the morning of September 11th, 2008? There was supposedly an unprecedented electronic run on the U.S. banking system, where over $550 billion was withdrawn within like an hour or two before they were able to stop it.
Huh.
And
where did you hear that?
Well, if you look, there's a C-SPAN interview with Paul Kanjorski, who's Pennsylvania congressperson. Let's see, he's chairman of the House Financial Services Subcommittee on Capital Markets.
Right.
He in this interview, he said that Bernanke and Paulson both briefed him and told him that is what triggered the banking collapse. And, that should be on the front page of the paper every morning for the last 6 months. But
Right.
who's heard about it?
All right.
And I was wondering
Interesting.
if you have any information
Sure.
about that. And, you could speculate as to, who could
Right.
have, we all say China.
Sure.
But
All right.
better than, Carlyle Group with other people together.
Okay.
Or,
All right.
who do you
Let's
think could have done
see what he
that?
says. Go ahead, Bob.
I don't know who caused it. I do know it happened. And I think anything untoward that the Treasury and the Federal Reserve is going to try to cover up as much as possible because they don't want people to think that their system is vulnerable, and it is. But it's no excuse for the recession, depression that we've entered into. It's an event that probably complicated it. And who knows whether it wasn't a government intervention to remove $550 billion and give it to the European Central Bank or something like that. We just don't know. There's so many things that we have to back into, and that one's very difficult because they just shut off the information.
I want to know more about that. Bill is in Deer Park, Washington, on Coast to Coast for Bob. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, my question has to do with foreign currency exchange. 2 weeks ago or so, George had a guest on, Andre Aguilar, and he said that like 98% of all U.S. dollars are traded outside the United States. So that is telling me that the whole world is riding on our back, the U.S. dollar. We're driving the whole world economy. So I want to know who or what entity this World Currency Exchange Commission is. Are they part of the UN, the World Bank, or what?
All right.
Well, the World Currency Exchange would be a privately operated entity. As far as the trading in dollars, yes, that percentage may be traded outside the United States. I do know that about 65% of all the physical U.S. dollars in one form or another in different denominations are held by foreigners. And a lot less are held in certain areas than were before. Like there used to be a great deal held in Russia, and now most of them have been changed for rubles or other currencies. The foreign exchange market trades over $3 trillion a day. And I'm rather surprised that the dollar is held up as long as it has. We saw deleveraging over the past year and a half where professional entities had borrowed money to participate in gambling in the markets.
Right.
And they had to reduce it because the banks cut back on what they could do, and that made the dollar artificially go up. Now, there's still leverage out there, and lots of it, but the dollar is starting to come down, and it's going to continue to do so.